Welcome to Missouri Law Matters, a podcast all about your Missouri court system. I'm your host, Matt Hamner. I'm a judge on the Missouri Court of Appeals for the Southern District based in Springfield, Missouri. Thank you for joining us today, and don't forget, if you're enjoying the podcast, to like and subscribe on your various services of choice, Apple, Spotify, wherever you're getting your podcasts. Also, don't forget, if you want to see us, you can check us out on YouTube, where all these podcasts also find a home as well. Please follow both the new Missouri Courts Facebook and Instagram page, as well as the Missouri Supreme Court Facebook and Instagram page for updates about the podcast and all the things that are going on with our Missouri court system. Don't forget to leave us comments on our episodes. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, and if you have any questions or things that you think we can address in future episodes. We always enjoy hearing back from the folks who are listening. Now, people may not realize that the backbone of our court system in Missouri is not the judges and the lawyers, but it's actually the thousands of court clerks who do all the coordinating and heavy lifting behind the scenes to keep everything running smoothly. They process and move mountains of information. They coordinate conflicting schedules and manage courtrooms and spend untold hours interacting with the public to provide them information and answers to their questions about the legal process. They are truly the unsung heroes of our court system. To talk with me about the role of the court clerk and how that job has evolved over the years, I have a great guest joining me today. Joining me on this episode today is Heather Officer, the circuit clerk for Laclede County, Missouri. Heather, welcome to the pod.
Thank you.
Now, Heather, how long have you been the circuit clerk here in Laclede County?
I've been the circuit clerk for 7 years now. I've been with the courts for 24 years.
So 24 years in the system, 7 years as a circuit clerk.
I took office in January of 2019.
Excellent. And you've held that role ever since?
I have.
Now, before you were the circuit clerk here in Laclede County, you worked in the office as a clerk. Is that right?
Correct.
Tell us a little bit about that experience and how you came to that role.
When I first started, I was placed at the front counter, the window, and dealt with traffic and criminal cases, and assisted people taking payments, answering the phone, and preparing files for court. We had file folders then. We had typewriters. We had a tractor feed printer that printed people's receipts when they made a payment. So we've come a long way from that. And then after a couple years, I became the probate clerk. And so I was the probate clerk for the next 17 years. And then in 2005, I became the chief clerk as well. So, basically, that's the office manager. So I overseen the civil and criminal supervisor and assisted the circuit clerk in whatever she needed.
You've seen a lot of change then over the years.
There's been a lot of change.
I really miss the computer printouts that had the little holes on the side that you had to tear off.
Yes.
I really miss that.
We did all of our cards, our judgment cards that way. All of our receipts were that way. Lots in the circuit side, we took all of our payments manually with carbon receipts. And so now we don't do that anymore. It's all electronic.
For the kids that are listening, this is like steam engines and things like that to them. They don't understand any of what we're talking about.
They do not. Sometimes some of our younger employees come across something in an old file when we have to look for things, and their minds are blown. They have no idea what a floppy disk is or something that we've recorded something on.
Change is always hard, but sometimes it can be good. And I certainly think we've come a long way in the tools that we have available to us to manage all the information that we have on our system.
Absolutely.
So, now, I am assuming, and maybe I'm wrong, that when you came out of school, when you came out of high school, your dream was not to come and work at the circuit clerk's office.
I didn't even know the circuit clerk's office existed.
So how did you get from, how did you find out that this was a career for you?
So the funny part is that, so I come out of high school and I started college and moved to Springfield, and I decided that I didn't like living on campus, but I was going to continue my education. So I moved home and was going to attend class at night, and needed a job during the day. And my grandma saw the posting in the newspaper and clipped it out and said, "You might want to go check this out. It's at the courthouse. That would probably fit your class schedule." And so I came in and applied and was hired at 30 hours a week to work. And that's how it started. And I fell in love with it. I enjoy serving the public. Some days are better than others. I just enjoyed it. Every day is different. And even after 24 years, you learn something new.
That's excellent. You know, and I feel the same way about being a judge, and that one of the things about the job that really appeals most to me is the variety. Despite the fact that we have similar types of cases that are filed every day, hundreds of cases that are all kind of in the same area, they're all different. Every single one of them is different. And you never know. When you walk through the door every morning, you never know what you're going to have that day. That's not for everybody. A lot of people like to have some certainty. It's like, I'm going to go to work and I'm going to do this today and I'm going to do this tomorrow.
Right.
But for those of us that like a little variety and a little spice in life, then, we like the variety of it. And certainly this job provides that.
It is. I like it because I like a good challenge, and some days are more challenging than others. This morning I got here early to make sure that the clerks knew that I had processed an ex parte in the middle of the night and that we needed to finish that up this morning. So I didn't want them to not have that first thing this morning. Some days we come in and we have 80 jurors summons for a potential trial that day. And so every day is just different when you come in. And some days we come in and we just start our running our court dockets and it's pretty calm. And other days the phone goes crazy as soon as it turns on at 8 a.m. and it's all hands on deck.
Yeah. And speaking of those hands, how many folks do you have working in your office now?
There are 12 clerks that I have. So that's a good number. We're still short one to be fully staffed.
How would the size of your office here in Laclede County, Missouri, would that compare to clerks' offices in other states? Are you on the lower end of staff? Are you kind of in the middle? Are you on the upper end? Where would you put yourself?
We're in the middle. We're not a super small court, but we're not a big city court either. But we're kind of a medium-sized court is how they classify us. So we have 4 courtrooms, and a lot of times we have 4 judges every day. Yesterday, there were about 300 people scheduled over the 4 courtrooms for the day. So 12 people working on that takes a lot to get that processed. We are very conscious that people want instant access to what happened on those court cases with CaseNet and things. And so the rule in my office is we process it as quickly as possible, but we want it to be accurate as well. And so usually everyone's caught up at the end of every day. They're great. They amaze me.
Having worked with your staff and all the clerks here in the 26th Circuit, particularly in Laclede County, everybody's done such a great job and took such good care of me when I was a trial judge here for many years. Talk a little bit about the challenges that come with trying to manage, a larger caseload with a small number of people. 12 people sounds like a lot, but when you compare that to the number of cases that get filed in Laclede County every year, which is in the thousands, and you have 12 people, and you think about the fact that there may only be a couple thousand cases filed, but each one of those cases has at least 2 people involved. And sometimes those cases have 10 or 12 people or parties that are involved in that case. So there are a lot of moving parts. So talk about the challenges of managing as the circuit clerk, having to manage staff and dealing with those large volumes of cases and large volume of information.
So on average, we have about 6,000 to 7,000 cases a year filed here in Laclede County. And we are set up as the civil department and the criminal department here in my office. Each of those clerks, there's 5 in each division, and they're all cross-trained to process all cases. And I think that's why we're able to stay on top of the volume of cases that we have. A lot of courts, I know that if someone who processes traffic cases is sick that day, they just have to wait. Here, we don't do that because I have 5 people who know how to process traffic cases, and 6 if you include myself. If someone's sick and someone's in court and I have another one working the window, then that's what I do for the day is process traffic cases or garnishments, or it's just all hands on deck all the time. And they're really good about doing that. They like to be busy and like to get their work done for the day, but it is challenging if people are on vacation or sick.
You mentioned the word cross-training, and I wanted to ask you about that. Your experience in working with other circuit clerks, is cross-training something that you think is common in other clerks' offices, or is it something that's kind of fairly new? And what benefits have you seen of that?
So when I first came to the courts, no one was cross-trained. You were just trained to process traffic cases or criminal cases. And so I don't think it's a new concept as far as probably in the last 15 years or so, but it took kind of that long. And it was helpful when we went on JIS in 2006 here in Laclede County. And so that was helpful because
and JIS is an electronic processing system that the courts currently use.
As we have moved through to electronic case processing, it makes the cross-training process easier. Because you don't have to go to someone's desk and say, do you have this case number, and actually get a physical file or go to the file room and find it. So that helps the time factor. When we have a new staff member, it takes a while because it takes about 2 years for a clerk to be fully trained to do their job well. It's just very detailed and very intricate work, and it needs to be 100% accurate because it's a permanent record for these people in their lives. And so we want it to be perfect for them.
Absolutely. And been talking about this, we've mentioned a little bit about Laclede County, which is where the courthouse is held. It is a county of about 50,000 people?
I think we're at 35,000.
35,000 or so.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not one of the smallest counties in the state, but it's certainly not one of the biggest. Every county in the state of Missouri has their own circuit clerk who handles the court system in that particular county. And in smaller counties, they may not have quite as many employees. They may not have quite as many cases filed, but they still have many, many more cases than they have staff that are managing them.
Yes.
And similarly, in larger counties, they are getting tens of thousands of filings in a year, and they have larger clerk staffs. Some of those offices, I think, run even up to almost 100 in some instances, but they still have thousands and thousands of cases more than the staff that they have available.
When it comes down to the end of the day, we've all processed cases the same way. Some have more volume than others.
You mentioned JIS, which is the electronic system that our courts have used for decades now in order to manage and coordinate information behind the scenes. The Missouri courts have created their own new case management system called Show Me Courts, which has gradually been rolled out over the last couple of years, but by the end of this year is supposed to be fully implemented if everything goes according to plan. So talk a little bit about the challenges of finding time and resources to train people when you're transitioning from a legacy system that people know and we've used for years and years and years to something entirely new. What challenges has that created in training?
Change is just hard for everybody, whether it's good change or bad change. We've really encouraged them to jump on board with this. We take little sections at a time. Our new clerks have just, for the last 2 years, been solely trained on Show Me Courts. We didn't really introduce that JIS because we knew it was going away. But our seasoned clerks, we take little sections at a time. We'll start that way so we get familiar with the system. And OSCA provided us several training tutorial videos to watch and kind of see how a case is processed. And so we would sit down with them and set up new civil cases today in Show Me Courts. So we'll do that for a week or so until you get comfortable with that. And then we just add the next step to it. And so we've just built on it as it's progressed too, and more functionalities became available. And so we're getting really close to having everything available there. And once the clerks are in the Show Me Court system and processing, they like it. They do.
As a society, I would like to think we've become a little bit more adaptable with the advent of iPads and cell phones and smartphones. I think people have gotten more used to, technology gets updated frequently. And we are hopeful as a court system that at the end of the day, Show Me Courts being a system that we utilize, that we have the power to control and augment, is going to be a real boon for us going forward. You had mentioned when you were talking about staff in your office that you were actually down an employee at this point, that you have room to hire.
I do.
Is that something that you understand as a trend around the state in our various clerks' offices? And why do you think that is?
I visit with clerks around the state all the time, and it is a trend. A lot of clerks are short, at least one person typically. I think that we live in a more rapid changing world today, and so people are not apt to just take, this is my career and this is where I'm going to stay. Some people like change, and the court's not for everybody either. If you don't have experience with the court system and you come in here, it's kind of like we speak a foreign language for a while. It takes a little bit to learn the ins and outs of just the terminology even. And so there's challenges to that. And again, it takes 2 years really to be comfortable and learn to be confident in what you're doing. And so some people, they just don't want to stick it out for that long. If they do, I think they find that they have a very rewarding career. I have a staff of 12, and I'm going to say 85% of them have been here more than 10 years. And then we always just have that 15% that just kind of is a turnover, because not everyone falls in love with public service or serving the court. But I think as far as the benefits that are available to clerks through the state and the ability to be challenged in your job and learn something new and have a good working environment, plus the benefits of your annual leave and your sick leave. We're pretty lax as if your child has a ball game that starts at 4:00. If you've got your stuff done and you have your annual leave, take a few hours, go enjoy your family too. And so I think that's a good place for a lot of clerks to be in, and that they can come enjoy their job, but they can also be present in their family's life too.
Say I am a young person in Hannibal, Missouri, or Kansas City, or St. Louis, or one of these places, and I hear that my local clerk's office has an opening. What would you tell those folks? What would you say to those people who are saying, I don't really know anything about the courts. I don't really know what the job would entail. I don't really know if this
Mhm.
is something that would be for me. What would be your pitch? What would you tell those folks?
Mhm.
Hey, you should give this a shot.
So anytime we pull someone in for an interview, we explain what our office does. I think that the official thing that the circuit clerk is tasked with doing is protecting and preserving the record. But it's so much more than that. So I just explain how the courts work, what kind of areas we do. I think it's very interesting work. I was the probate clerk for 17 years and I loved probate work. It's just very interesting. I like that we get to play a role in people's lives, to be professional and do a good job, but everything we do affects people's lives. And so I feel like we're serving the public in a great way. And so you really just have to have a heart for public service, I think, truly, to have a career in the courts. And there are a lot of people out there that I think would be interested in that if they would just come in and learn maybe what we do, or maybe just come hang out with us for the day and see if that might be something you're interested in. We get a lot of kids from school that come in and job shadow for the day or just come take a tour of the courts. And then they'll go, we didn't even know this existed here in our county because, it's a good thing that they've never experienced the court side of our county, but they'll go, wow, you guys do a lot for our county that we didn't even know was here. And so I encourage them to come in maybe and just check it out and hang out for the day, do a job shadow or something like that.
So, what types of qualities do you look for in
Mhm.
your people that are coming in to be clerks? And if people have certain types of qualities, you think they might be particularly interested in this
Mhm.
job?
So you have to definitely have an eye for detail because every detail counts when you're processing a court case. You need to have a level head on you. We're to remain impartial, and people call and want us to give them advice that we can't give them or tell them something that we don't know the answer to. And sometimes people are just really upset because it's an emotional situation that they're in. And so you have to just really kind of let them talk it out for a little bit and then, and calmly just, I'm sorry you're facing this situation. Just help you give you some information about your case. And that's what we can do. And so we look for people that would have good attendance, that have had some computer skills. Obviously, most kids coming out of school have that now. If you have some office experience or 2 years, an associate degree is our minimum requirements or comparable office experience. They have to be willing to go to court and listen to some things that you're not always exposed to in your life. And so we ask those questions too if they're okay with hearing some things that maybe they've not experienced before in their life and can just be impartial and focus and take good record of what goes on. We call references to double check their attendance and just their ability to come to work every day.
Talk a little bit about the volume of interaction that your office
Mhm.
has with the public, both in person,
Mhm.
on the telephone, and through emails and all the
Correct.
various ways that they
Uh-huh.
communicate. Talk a little bit
Yes.
about.
So we really do a lot of more interaction on the phone these days. Of course, they can go online and plead and pay their traffic ticket if they choose to. And that's all processed behind the scenes. But then if something doesn't work, they call our office and say, hey,
Mhm.
I need help processing my traffic case. So we'll kind of walk them through how they can do that online, or we'll talk to them about that over the phone. A lot of people just need their information. They need their court date. They need to know who their attorney is or who the opposite attorney is, something like that. Some people are really disgruntled. And so you have to know that that's not a personal thing that they're going to call and maybe not be very nice for a few minutes, but they just need to get it out. And then sometimes you have people, they've sent flowers to the office because they thought we were just so helpful. And then the next time you'll pick up the phone and someone thinks you're not being very helpful at all. The phone rings constantly all day long. We have a high volume of traffic coming into our windows. A lot of times it's someone that needs an order of protection or something like that. And so if they need help filling out that paperwork, so we can call our local advocates to come do that, our victim advocates at our domestic violence shelter.
I think over the years of being a judge, there have been some rare instances where I've had to step in and mediate some disputes between some members of the public and our clerk's offices. Not just in this county, but in
Sure.
other counties as
Mhm.
well. And what I learned from most every single one of those instances, what I found when I would call and speak to a member of the public about those issues, is that they had confusion about the clerk's role in the process. They believed, for whatever reason, rightly or wrongly,
Mhm.
that the clerk had some decision-making authority,
Right.
was making some sort of decision in their
Mhm.
case that was affecting them, and
Mhm.
they weren't happy about that.
Mhm.
And so they would then unleash the animus
Mhm.
that they have about the process and the
Correct.
case
Mhm.
on the clerk's office.
Yeah.
And this is a good opportunity, I think, to say, for me at least,
Mhm.
and for others, that the clerks have no input whatsoever
Right.
into what is going on in your case.
Correct.
They don't have any control over the outcome. They don't have any control over the decisions that are made by the judge or the actions that are done by the lawyers.
Right.
You are just there to help all of us facilitate the legal process, moving it forward, keeping things scheduled, keeping things organized, and making sure we've got a good record of everything. Those instances where I've been involved, I've had to have conversations, and I would tell all those listening at home, the clerk isn't making decisions in your case.
No,
So whatever anger you have about whatever is going on in your case, and it's understandable when people get angry about cases that are very important to them and that they're very passionate about. But a lot of times I've seen that anger be misplaced towards our clerk. They're just trying to keep the thing moving and do their job and answer questions as best they can. So I wish I could say that it was always going to be better, but we know it's not.
What we do is sometimes a highly emotional situation for people to be in. And so that's kind of what I explain to my new clerks. Our job here is to prepare these court records for the judge. He makes the decisions, and then we record the outcomes, regardless of what it is. But we're to remain impartial to that. That's our job. We prepare those court records and get them ready. And we assist people as much as we're allowed to, telling them their court dates, making sure it's out on CaseNet quickly for people to check the outcome of their case or their new court date, or if they filed something and they want to view it, we make sure we try to get that done in a timely fashion. That way it's available to the public. I always say, when we had file folders that we had to pull, we always started that court cases are kind of like writing a book. You have to start at the beginning. And so that's what we do in the beginning. We initiate the case and we prepare it for court. And then the plot's kind of in the middle where it's going back and forth to court. They get that done. And then the conclusion is what happens at the end. And we make sure we get all that and got our book and we file it back on the shelf.
And now that I'm an appellate judge, I have to tell you, I'm very, very appreciative of the records that you all create at the circuit court level, which I didn't really give as much thought to when I was a trial judge here. But now that I'm an appellate judge, and the only thing that we review, and people who are listening may not know, when cases come to the appellate court, we don't have another trial. We don't hear from witnesses. We don't have all the typical stuff that you would see on TV and think about in a court case. What we review is the record from the trial court below. We read all the transcripts from the hearings. We read the motions. We read the things that were filed in the case. And that's how we get our information and how we make our decision. And so when we have clerk's offices that are doing such a great job of preserving the record and making a clear record and preserving all that information for us, it makes our job easier to review cases and make sure that everything is done. So thank you for that. In my new role, I'm very appreciative, even more so, of the clerks and how much they take care of us. So thank you for that. Talk to me a little bit about pro se litigants who come and try to represent themselves for whatever type of case, be it criminal, be it civil, be it orders of protection, family law. Are you seeing more of those folks that are trying to represent themselves these days?
We are.
Why do you think that is?
I think that the availability of information on the internet is it's wider and greater. And so people can get on there and kind of look up what they want to do at the court. And then, the court's website has a lot of forms available for pro se litigants. As far as, if you want to file for a dissolution of marriage, a pro se, you can go on and read on the court's website what you would need to do that. And so we have a lot of people that print the forms off of the court's website and bring them in and want to file them without counsel. It's increased. I think that it's just more available these days.
That dovetails perfectly in my next question. I was going to talk about tools. Certainly the tools for pro se litigants that are unrepresented have gotten better over the years.
Correct.
What kind of tools are out there? You mentioned the forms on the website. Any other tools that you're aware of?
We usually direct people to the court's website just because those are the state of Missouri's forms that are approved, I think, from the Supreme Court. So that way they have a good start to their case. I think that you can probably Google a petition for dissolution of marriage and come up with a whole lot of options. We'll file whatever they ask us to file on their case, but we usually refer them to the state of Missouri's website to just double check and make sure they have what they need for their case to be successful.
I've also been told, I believe, that the state of Missouri court system also has, Facebook and Instagram. So they can also go to those pages to get information, and they could follow those as well to get additional information about the court system. Excellent. If I'm sitting at home and I have some sort of dispute that I want to get dealt with at court, and I don't think I have the money to hire an attorney, and I'm going to try to tackle this myself, what advice would you give folks who are thinking about whether or not they should come in and represent themselves in a matter. I'm not asking about legal advice and whether they're going to win or not, but in the clerk's office, what advice would you give them in trying to proceed representing themselves?
I would say I would research what your dispute is regarding and how you're going to go about that. Make sure that your documents are clear and they're legible for the court. We get some that are really just not in good shape and they're not really legible for the judge to make a good decision on. Make sure that you have been clear on your paperwork, what you're asking for. We'll give you a filing information sheet when you come in, and we give you the redaction certificate and what you would need for those types of things, because redaction is a big part of people's public access now. They don't want their personal information to be out there on CaseNet. So we need to make sure that they understand that they need to review their documents and make sure they're redacted properly before we place them in their court file and they go out to the World Wide Web. And just come in and make sure you are following your case on CaseNet and you know when your court dates are. Make sure you stay on top of it. It's your case. It's yours to proceed on. They come in and sometimes they think that, again, that we're going to be the ones that take care of their case for them. Our job is to file your case and prepare it for court. It's your case. You need to make sure that you know how to proceed on that and stay on top of it.
And I tell people all the time when I'm talking to them and they ask questions about the clerk's office, and it's like, well, they didn't tell me I needed to assert this claim, or they didn't tell me I needed to do this. And I have to tell them all the same thing. As wonderful as you all are, as all the clerks in the state of Missouri are, and they're so good with information about the courts and how we work and how they work, they can't give legal advice. They're not allowed to give legal advice under the rules. They can't help one party over the other. So you may really want to have an answer to, well, should I file this claim, or should I do this or that in your case? The clerks can't help you with that. They can't answer those types of questions. Now, they can tell you how much your filing fee is. They can tell you what you need to do to put a document in shape in order for it to be filed with the court, or how you would go about filing things and things of those natures, and getting a hearing scheduled and things like that. They can help you with all the logistical. But when it comes down to telling you how it is that you need to pursue a claim in order to be successful, they can't do that. And sometimes I think that message gets lost in translation sometimes.
It does.
What small things do you think that the pro se litigants that you have that come into court, or that come into your office, come up to your window, call you on the phone, what small things do you think that they could do in order to more effectively work with your all's office? If they have something that they need to get done in their case and they need help from the clerk's office, are there any small things that they could do that would maybe make it more effective in them communicating with your all's office?
We direct them to the state of Missouri's website, and a lot of times they have not been there, because there's a lot of good information on there for them to read about the various cases that are available to file as a pro se litigant. And so it would be beneficial for them to do a little bit of research before they come in with their filing, and make sure they have kind of followed the flow of the direction from the state of Missouri's website.
And similarly, if they'll do that research in advance, it'll make them a little bit more comfortable with the system.
It will. They'll understand what they need a little bit better. And then when they come in and we just make sure all their documents are there, then they'll understand that that's what we're looking for, and it'll just go a little bit smoother for them.
I mean, coming to court is very intimidating. Whether you have a lawyer or not, coming to the courthouse and dealing with a court case, it's not something that you do every day, and some people never have to do it. And so it's a unique experience. And I could always tell as a trial judge, those people that had actually done a little bit of homework and kind of understood how the process worked, and those that had just walked in and just, well, we'll see how it goes. Because the ones that came in and did a little bit of homework always seemed more at ease. They were a little bit more familiar with the process. And that can only help. If nothing else, whether or not it will actually help the outcome of the trial, and nothing else, it makes it a less anxiety-inducing event in your life to come to court and to do those things. So we talked a little bit at the beginning about how when you started, it was all paper files, and now we've gone to computers and JIS, and now we're going to a completely new system. Do you see changing technology continuing to impact what it is that you all do going forward?
I believe so. In 24 years, I never imagined we would be at this point, and it's changed rapidly. And so I think that probably on the horizon, there are some more changes that can take place with the courts. Attorneys and agencies can e-file now. I can see that being available to pro se litigants at some point. Already in the last almost 2 years, people can view documents on CaseNet now. They couldn't do that previously. They could see what was happening on their case, but they couldn't read the actual documents. Just in the last couple of years, that's become available to the public. So in some ways we get less requests for copies and things because they can see those documents. And in other ways it triggers more questions for people sometimes.
And I know another technological advance that's affected your all workload and kind of changed the court system, especially dealing with pro se folks and everybody growing out of the pandemic, was the expanded use of virtual hearings. Because we've always had the ability to do virtual hearings or remote hearings, but the technology wasn't very good. It wasn't really very user friendly, and it was more complicated. And so it just didn't happen very often. But after the pandemic and after all of the adjustments that had to be made in the court system during that time, out of that grew this ability that most of the courthouses now in the state have the ability to utilize virtual hearings. Now, they don't utilize virtual hearings for everything. And you're not necessarily going to get a virtual hearing every time you want a virtual hearing. You will have to come to court. Even sometimes when you don't want to, you're going to have to come to court. But virtual hearings are also a tool that I know that's also affected your all's offices, because not only now do you have to process the information in the papers, but now you got to figure out how to run virtual hearings.
We have to figure out how to get everyone in the same room virtually at the same time. So,
right.
Yes, we had to learn how to do that and navigate it. And when it works great, it's a great tool for a lot of situations. And sometimes it's technology. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Technology is great, except when it isn't.
Right.
And but I'm a big fan of virtual hearings in certain circumstances. They were certainly, as a trial judge, I appreciated the flexibility that they gave us as trial judges to hold hearings, on an emergency basis or on a short notice basis if we really needed to get to something. But I do think that we're only going to see that technology get better, and we're only going to see those possibilities, I think, expand kind of going forward. Is there anything else that you think folks should know about the clerk's office or your job or what it is that the folks in your office do that we haven't already talked about?
I think it's a kind of a hidden gem in our county. I think when you go out and tell people you're the circuit clerk, they don't know what you do. They say, what's the circuit clerk? Do you do elections? Nope, that's the county clerk. So we explain that we maintain all of the state's court records for our county, and they go, wow, we didn't know we had that here locally. Do you have a staff? Yes, we do. And if you come to court, that's where that comes from. Or a lot of people don't realize that it's here in our county. That's how things get on case stand. They don't understand that it's coming from here locally. And so we have a great staff here, and I appreciate them very much. I would love to be fully staffed. So if anyone's looking for a job after watching this, please come and apply. I think you might be interested. So.
And that's a perfect way to dovetail into the last thing I was going to say, which is I'm greatly appreciative for you coming on today. At the clerk's office here in Laclede County, I've worked with, have had great experience with that. But what I want to make clear is that every single county in the state of Missouri has someone just like you. They have an elected circuit clerk who has a staff who does the exact same things that we've been talking about today. And that's whether you live northern Missouri on the Iowa border, that's whether you live all the way down in the Boot Hill. You have a circuit clerk in your county that does exactly what we've been talking about today. And for the most part, my understanding is they all need help. A lot of the clerk's offices in our state are looking for help. They're looking for people who are motivated, who want a great job, that's got some variety to it, that's very rewarding, but also gives you some flexibility with your life and what it is that you want to do. And so I would encourage anybody who's listened to this conversation today that wherever you're at, it's not just that you have to come to Laclede County and work for Heather, even though Heather's great. There's a local circuit clerk in your county that would be happy to talk to you about a career in being a law clerk and give you the opportunities that Heather has had and that the folks in her office had to learn how to do this job and to get good at this job and to have the experiences that they've had. I would encourage anybody who's interested in learning more about the process, who's interested in maybe becoming part of the team for our judiciary, don't hesitate to visit your local circuit clerk's office in the county where you reside and ask them if they have any openings. Talk to them about the job, because they would be more than happy to talk to you. And I think it would be a wonderful experience, and it's a great career path for folks. Now, before I let you get out of here, one last thing I'll ask you. And I ask everybody this: what's your favorite thing that you have seen lately? And this could be anything. It could be a TV show or a movie, or it could be a beautiful sunset or a painting, just something that you've laid eyes on that you said, wow, that's really cool.
So we're in the middle of southern Missouri, and I'm a farm girl through and through. And so we have a field full of baby calves, and they're just running around and playing and having a great time. We live in a great place. And so just some of the simple things in life, it just makes me happy to watch them run around, new life.
I love late spring, early summer. I live Lake the Ozarks, and just north of here. And this is young deer season, of course, and we have just young, small deer everywhere, and they're just all following mamas down the road and across the road. This time of year is awesome. It's an awesome time to be in the Ozarks and central Missouri, southern Missouri area. And so I wholeheartedly co-sign on that. Heather, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you.
I have enjoyed it tremendously, and I hope that you all listening and watching at home have enjoyed it. Remember, if you've enjoyed the podcast and you're enjoying what you're hearing and seeing, don't forget to like and subscribe on Apple or Spotify. Also, catch up with us on YouTube if you want the full audio and video experience with us there. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the Missouri Courts and the Supreme Court of Missouri Facebook and Instagram page, where you'll get all sorts of updates about the court system and the things that we do and the incredible people that work in it. With nothing else for us to discuss today, I want to once again thank my guest, Heather, for being here today. Stay tuned for our next episode. This podcast is adjourned.